Havel Helpu Hunan self-help courses to improve your mental well-being.
Hello again, and welcome to the Helpu Hunan Stress Management and Relaxation course. So this is session number 4, and in this session we're going to be talking about mindfulness. So this is a very practical session. So again, we've already looked at lots of different ways to try and bring down your stress level and to help you to relax. So moving on from that now, we're going to be talking about bringing mindfulness into your day-to-day life. So for this one, as you can see, I'm out in the garden just because I think it's a nice place to be talking about mindfulness, because I do enjoy just being mindful of nature. So that's why I'm out in my garden. But what I'm going to be talking you through, you can do even if you don't have a garden. We're going to talk about lots of different ways that you can practice mindfulness, lots of different techniques. So I hope you do get some benefit from this, and I hope you manage to put some of these things into practice. Okay, so I wanted to start by just explaining what mindfulness actually is, and then we can go on to how we can use it. So mindfulness in itself, in its essence, is the act of being present and being acceptant of where you are in the here and now. So for most of us, even those without anxiety or depression, our thoughts, if we're aware of our thoughts, they are racing 10 to the dozen. We can be thinking about lots of different things. We often tend to end up thinking about the past, and we also worry about the future, and we can also think about lots of different things in the present. So actually, when it comes to our mental health, it is better for us to stay living in the present, to keep our focus, to keep our awareness in the present. We do find people with anxiety and depression, the thoughts tend to linger on what has happened in the past, which is understandable. So many people have been through stressful situations or trauma in the past. So it's very, very difficult, but our minds will automatically go back to that place, and it can almost feel as though you have all those same feelings that you had back then. You're reliving it here and now. The other thing that tends to happen is we often sort of worry about what's going to happen in the future. So quite often when we're anxious, you're thinking of the worst case scenario of what's going to happen. So it can lead to that catastrophic thinking or sort of fortune telling, so telling the future about what's going to happen. And that doesn't help our mood, it can make us even more anxious. So the process of mindfulness is a very gentle, very kind way of keep bringing those thoughts back to the present. I was once told that our minds are a bit like monkeys. So monkeys jumping from tree to tree. So you can imagine thought after thought. It keeps jumping from tree to tree to tree. And sometimes we're not aware of that to start with, but the more you get into mindfulness, you will be aware of more and more of these thoughts. And the thing is with mindfulness is we're not trying to eradicate those thoughts, we're not trying to get rid of them. We are simply being aware, giving space in our minds, and allowing those thoughts to just be and accepting those thoughts. But at the same time, it's not giving so much power over those unhelpful thoughts. So there's lots of different ways to practice, but that is in essence what mindfulness is. It's keeping that mental focus in a calm, accepting way on the present. So it could be your present mood, your present physical feelings, your present thoughts, or we can use different objects. So we can use objects that we look at, we can use grounding exercises. There's lots of different ways we can put this into practice. But that's what mindfulness is in essence. Okay, so the first exercise that I want to do with you is called mindful breathing. So I use this a lot in my work. I use it a lot for people because it's a really simple way to start using mindfulness in your day-to-day life. It's something that you can do at any time actually, without people even noticing that's what you're doing. So have a go with it. We'll see how you get on. Now, don't expect to be able to get benefit from this straight away. It's like any relaxation practice, it can take some time to really get the benefit from it. We instinctively, as humans, when we get anxious, we get that fight or flight response, we get that increased breathing rate. So what this breathing exercise will do is hopefully to relax some of that breath. It's about bringing the breath into the belly rather than breathing quite shallow from the top of your lungs. Okay, so to do this I want you just to sit comfortably in a chair. You can actually do it lying down as well if you want to, but we're going to do it sitting in a chair. So to start with, I want you just to make sure you're nice and comfortable and place a hand over your chest. Okay, I want you to relax here. I want you to breathe normally, and all you're doing here is simply noticing to see whether you can feel the breath moving your chest, making your chest rise up and down slightly. What you can do then is put a hand on your belly as well, so just sort of over the belly button. So again, I want you just to notice the breathing, so you're not trying to change the breathing at all at this stage, you're just noticing that breath to see if you can feel one or both of those hands slightly rising and falling. So it probably won't be a very big movement, it will just be a very slight rise and fall here. So what we're starting to be aware of is whether the breath is coming into the top of our lungs or down towards the bottom of our lungs. Okay, so what we're trying to do now is we're going to try and bring the breath deeper down into the base of our lungs, so towards where our hand is on our belly. Okay, so what we're going to do is bring some nice gentle deep breaths into the belly and out. You do it at your own time and make these breaths really gentle, so you're not forcing the breath, you're simply encouraging that breath to go down towards your hand on your belly. So do this in your own time, and what you're going to try and do is try and be aware of that hand on the belly slightly rising and falling with every breath. As you do this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the top part of your lungs as still as possible. So there'll be a slight movement perhaps on the top of the chest, but you're hoping, you're trying to get the breath in towards the belly. So trying to help that hand rise and fall. There we go. So you can take the hand off the chest, but keep the other hand on the belly for now. As you just continue to do that, being aware of that breath coming in and out. So as we get more into the relaxation here, if you want to, you can have your eyes closed or just looking down, with your eyes partially open. And you can simply just carry on with those breaths, bringing the breath into the belly, noticing that rise and fall. And you can feel it now as if you've got a balloon underneath that hand. And when you breathe in, you're filling that balloon with air so that hand rises up. When you breathe out, that balloon sinks back in, so the hand goes in slightly. Like I say, keep these breaths nice and gentle, so you're not trying to force the breath. You're just allowing it to enter and leave that balloon, that imaginary balloon, in your belly. So now, remembering that our minds are going to wander like that monkey mind, jumping from tree to tree. The mind is jumping from thought to thought. Be kind and accepting of yourself with that. You simply notice any thoughts or feelings as you do this. Notice them, but let them pass. And keep bringing your attention back to the breath in your belly, like that balloon rising and falling, bringing our attention back to that balloon in your belly, filling all your body with that calm, relaxing breath. And now we can take the hand off the belly, slowly coming to again, becoming aware of where you are. You can open up your eyes again. Come back to where you are, so noticing all the things around you, noticing the floor under your feet. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. That's just one of the exercises. So as we've said, try lots of different things and see which works best for you.
The next exercise we're going to do is called grounding. Grounding is a really useful way of bringing our minds back to the present moment. It's particularly effective for people with stress and anxiety, or even those who have got trauma, PTSD, because it brings you away from any negative thoughts and feelings in your mind, back to where you are in the here and now. The way that we do that is we need to be aware of the senses that we have in perceiving the world around us. We actually have more than 5 senses in the body, but we're focusing on the main 5, which are looking, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting. So starting this off, I want you to be nice and comfortable, whether you're sitting down or lying down, inside or outside, just in a place that you won't be disturbed. So I want you to start just by looking around you and noticing 5 different things that you can see. So these might be items of furniture. It could be really anything. Just notice them and say those things back in your mind. So I'm giving you a few examples here. So you might see a table, a chair, a light, pictures on the wall, or a window with the sky coming through. So those are just a few examples. And now, listening. So I want you to notice at least 4 things that you can hear around you. Noticing the sounds and then just giving it a name and repeating it back to yourself in your mind. The key with this is just to be aware without any judgment or any negative feelings, just noticing the sounds as they come to your ears. For example, we might hear close by, we can hear the sound of our own breath perhaps. We might hear a clock ticking in the room. We might hear noises of people outside the room or close by. We might hear the sound of traffic in the distance, or perhaps if we're out in nature, we might hear the sound of wind going through the trees or birds singing. And now for the sense of touch. So now notice at least 3 things that you can feel. As you do this, you can notice those sensations and just say it back to yourself in your mind. So some examples could be simply feeling how your feet feel as they rest on the floor underneath you, or feeling your body as it rests against the chair or the bed supporting you. Or it could be that you can feel how your clothes feel against your skin. Or you might be wanting to hold on to some sort of object nearby and just be aware of how that feels. And finally, let's become aware of our sense of smell and taste. So notice at least 2 different smells you might be able to be aware of. Again, just noticing without judgment. And then lastly, be aware, even though you're not eating at the moment, be aware of any lingering taste that may be in your mouth.
Okay, so the next exercise that I show you will be another mindfulness exercise, but this is mindfulness of an object. So for this one, you're going to use an object to be your focus of mindfulness. The nice thing about this one is that you can actually take that object with you to any places that feel stressful or difficult. If it's a small object, you can keep it in your pocket and you can use it as your focus for grounding and mindfulness to help you to feel better in those stressful situations. So just to show you then, one of the items I've got here I'm going to use is a little stone. Okay, there's loads of different things you can use for this mindfulness exercise. I'm using this little stone because it's a lovely smooth texture, it fits nicely in my hand, and obviously it says be happy on it. Okay, so it's something nice, nice to hold for me. But you have to play around and find things that work for you. You might have things like a picture that's special to you that brings you comfort. You might even want to use things like a stress ball or something squishy. Okay, so this is our Havel bus. So this is quite nice, you can squeeze it and you know, that creates a lot of nice tension and then release as you do that. Other things you can use are precious stones like crystals, or even things like this, marbles. Again, something nice and smooth, nice to hold in your hands. The other thing that people tend to like are things like this, these fidget spinners. Again, there's something nice that you can hold in your hand and it's very tactile. You can use it to take your mind off what's going on in your head into what you're going to be doing with your hands there. Okay, so just to demonstrate this then, I'm going to go back to using my nice stone. Okay, so as we did in the grounding exercise earlier, we're going to use our senses. So I'm not expecting any sense of taste or smell particularly with these objects. So we're really just looking at the sights, the feeling, and any sounds around you as you do this. So I want you to sit comfortably with the object that you choose. Remember, it can be any object that you like, and just hold it in your hands. Okay, so in the palms of your hands like that. And as you do that, again, just relaxing into it, becoming aware of the sights first of all. So you'd look down and look at your object. So you'd notice all the different colourings on that object, looking at the colours, the shapes. You might even notice the reflection if it's shiny, the texture of the object. So looking for any shadows, so really just paying attention to all of the things you can see in that object there. So the next thing then is touch. So obviously as you're holding the object in your hands, you can just be aware of the touch in your hands. Feel the weight of it. Does it feel heavy? Does it feel light? Feel the texture of it. What's that like? Is it smooth? Is it rough? Is it hard? Is it soft? So think of all those things in your mind as you're feeling this, holding this object here. Okay. So as you do that, I want you just to try and keep your mind focusing back on that object in your hands. Again, you can be looking at it. You can even close your eyes if you purely want to do the feel of the object. If you have your eyes closed, you can actually just still visualize it in your mind. And then you can just use that as your focus. And as you do this, you will find that your mind starts to wander. So as in all mindfulness exercises, you just notice your thoughts wandering and bring them back to that object in your hands. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk to you about on our mindfulness journey, as it were, is becoming aware of things in the present moment, building up your mindfulness of day-to-day activities. So I always say to people, mindfulness isn't necessarily a case of you have to sit down and rigidly practice meditation at certain times each day. Mindfulness is something that you very much bring to your day-to-day activities, so it's not anything additional that you need to do actually. It's simply refocusing your awareness in doing all of your normal activities. So what do we normally like to do? Well, of course, we all eat, okay? So this is mindfulness of eating. So what we tend to do generally, and I'm guilty of this, is that we tend to do things on autopilot. So not really thinking or being aware of what we're doing. So if we've got a plate of food in front of us, quite often we're sort of shoveling it in. We're not often sort of really thinking about all those tastes and smells, all of those senses as we're doing it. Quite often you might have finished your meal and you weren't really paying attention to how it actually tasted. So we do lose some awareness in that way. So a nice thing to do is actually be mindful when you're eating. So just like we did in the last exercise, we can be aware of all of our senses with the food that we're eating. So for instance, I've got a peach here. So if you take something like a peach, or it could be anything you're eating at all, but before you actually eat it, and it doesn't have to take long, it doesn't have to be, taking you any more time than you normally would, but just focus on the look of the food. So you can look at it, look at all those different colours, the different textures, the shapes, the size of it, okay, just like we did earlier. Then you can actually, you can use your smell then. So you can put it up to your nose, you can have a nice smell, see what it smells like. You can even, if you've got some food sizzling on the frying pan, you might hear sounds associated with those foods as well. So you're bringing the hearing into it. And then obviously touch. So if it's something like this, obviously like some fruit, you can feel it in your hands before you eat it. You can actually then just go straight on to eating the food. So if you're using a fork, obviously just put a mouthful in your mouth, or just take a bite. And then when you've got a bite of food in your mouth, then is the time to really be aware of all of the different tastes in your mouth. So maybe just slow down the eating a little bit to do that. Again, it doesn't have to be a really slow process, but you might be able to be aware of different tastes in different areas of your mouth. Remember, we've got all sorts of different taste buds that experience different tastes. So we've got sweetness, we've got bitter, we've got sour, we've got pungent. There's lots of different tastes that you might experience in your mouth. So hopefully with the first few steps of really looking and smelling and then touching, then when you go on to actually putting it in your mouth and tasting it, if you spend a little tiny bit of extra time over it, you might get a really more a much more immersive experience with that taste. You'll recognise a lot more taste perhaps than you normally would. Okay, so that's mindfulness of eating. I would say that you can do mindfulness with any activities that you do. So one I like to do is be quite mindful in the shower. So obviously when we're having a wash, you can be aware of the sensations of the water running over your skin. You can be aware of temperature, the warmth. You can be aware of smells around you, so maybe the smells of the soap that you're using or the shampoos. You can be aware of the sound of the water is actually really soothing. So again, you can use mindfulness in absolutely anything that you do actually. Even driving, when you're driving, we often go onto autopilot. When you're driving, try just being aware of the sensation of the steering wheel underneath your hands. Be aware of how your foot or both feet feel on the pedals. Be aware of the sounds around you as you're driving. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can put this into practice. We all lead very busy lives, especially those in busy households. Maybe there's children around, there's always lots of noise, lots of things going on, and we can't stop our day-to-day lives, which is why sometimes if we build the mindfulness in to those day-to-day activities, it can be really helpful. So what I'd really encourage you to do then is to create that space in your mind for mindfulness, even when everything goes on as normal around you. Remember that the main philosophy behind mindfulness is acceptance. So it's acceptance of all the sounds, acceptance of what's going on around you. You're simply noticing and watching it go, watching things come and go into your day-to-day life. Okay, so that brings us to the end now of this session of the Stress Management and Relaxation course. So this session hopefully has taught you a few of the different mindfulness exercises that you can try to use in your life. Again, you can start off small, try and put in a few little bits of mindfulness as and when. I always say with people with trying to build up mindfulness, it's very much forming a new habit. So very much like waking up and brushing your teeth in the morning, you need to set a little bit of time aside to think, this is when I'm going to do some mindfulness. It doesn't mean you have to stop what you're doing, all your normal activities. What I'd encourage you to do is to try and practice all of your day-to-day things, but in a mindful way. So again, you may not be able to do all your activities mindfully, you wouldn't expect to, but maybe just set a little goal of, when I'm eating breakfast, perhaps I'm going to eat my breakfast mindfully. Or when I'm in the shower, I'm going to be mindful of being in the shower. Remember those 5 senses that we use. Try and engage all of those 5 senses in all of your day-to-day activities, and that is the way to bring the mindfulness to you. And again, it's practice, and hopefully as you keep doing that, you'll get more and more sense of calm, a sense of space within your mind. So those anxious thoughts that you may get, or those sort of negative thoughts about the past, all of that will be given less power. You're taking the power away, the focus away from those unhelpful thoughts, unhelpful feelings, bringing that focus to the day-to-day. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed this session. We've only got one session left, so please join me for the next one, where I'll be rounding everything up that we've talked about, putting everything into place. Also teaching you a few other quick tricks, a few tips to try and help you to relax further. So please join me for that one, the last one in this course. So until then, take care of yourselves.